Hi, everyone. My name is Sherry Nickerson. I'm a director here at Old Line Government Affairs, and we welcome you to another edition of Online with Old Line. For this edition, we're really excited to introduce Delegate Chris Adams, who represents District 37B, which represents Caroline, Dorchester, Talbot, and Wicomico counties. So welcome, Delegate Adams. We're so glad you could be here with us today.
Sherry, thank you for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to spending some time with you this afternoon. Yeah.
Well, we're going to start with a little bit of background on you.
Okay.
Delegate Adams was born in Salisbury and grew up in the area. He earned both his undergrad and MBA at Salisbury State University and runs a very successful family carpet and flooring business. He's married and has 3 children, and was elected to the Maryland House of Delegates originally in 2014 and started serving in 2015. He currently serves on the Economic Matters Subcommittee, which handles, so many issues: alcoholic beverages, financial institutions, business occupations and regulations, consumer protection, insurance, energy. I could go on all day long. It's a very busy committee, right? And then you also serve on the Banking, Consumer Protection, and Commercial Law Subcommittee. And most recently, you've been elected to serve as the House Minority Whip. So let's go ahead and get started. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, whatever I missed, and the district that you represent?
Sure. Well, Sherry, I'm a 5th generation Marylander of and from the Eastern Shore. My family business, my grandfather started in 1964, so I'm the 3rd generation in that business. You mentioned my 3 children. The youngest one is just starting in the business. All 3 are going to the same college I went to. So, and that's all happening at one time. My kids are 23, 21, and 20. So anyway, I'm seeing the end of my responsibilities for paying for college.
I was going to say, no chance of retiring in the next couple of years, huh?
Well, we'll get there. My wife's a public school teacher and a strong supporter of my, running for office, which has to happen. The family has to be on board. My family business, we're small developers. We own some commercial real estate, residential real estate. The crux of our company is we are retailers. I have 34 employees at the moment. Wish we had more. We're suffering from the same difficulties with hiring that I think a lot of businesses are talking about right now. And we're happy to be here today. I could go further in my background, but that starts it.
Well, all of that business background and all of the family business, makes you a perfect fit for the Economic Matters Subcommittee, or Economic Matters Committee. Can you give us just like a little bit of demographic information about your district?
Right. Well, I'm from Wicomico County, so we are 4 counties. You mentioned the names. The bulk of my district is Talbot County, which is 2 counties away. I came from the part of the district where Wicomico represents about 20% of the district, and Caroline, I have about 10% of my district, very rural. We're quite conservative, as you might imagine, and when I was running for office, my furthest point away when I was door knocking was about an hour and a half away from my front door. I hear some of my colleagues, like from Montgomery County, that represent probably 3 or 4 city blocks. I represent 3 or 4 counties. It's interesting then. We represent people in different ways, and while the numbers are the same, the districts certainly are different. We have some of the longest shoreline. I think my friends from St. Mary's County would argue, but we have a lot of the Chesapeake Bay that runs along Talbot County, St. Michael's, Oxford, Dorchester County, Hooper's Island, Wicomico County, the Nanticoke. So, the environment's very important to me. The fishing, the recreational aspect of the Eastern Shore. Our main driver, economic driver, employment, both direct and indirect, is from agriculture and more specifically the poultry industry, for which if you drive down to the Ocean City or come through and you see all the corn, the soybean and grains, much of that is to feed our chicken industry, both Maryland and in Delaware. And so I'm immediately, challenged in Annapolis because we have these varying interests, both environmentally and from an economic standpoint, as we're trying to maintain our, way of life on the shore. Citizens on the Eastern Shore like independence. They like to be left alone as much as possible. And so we try to reflect those values in Annapolis. And look, we have agreement, amongst all of the colleagues to have a clean Chesapeake Bay, and I want that as much as anybody else. So that fits the demographics to the best of my ability to describe it briefly.
I thought that was a great explanation, and it's also great that having grown up in that area and having your family been in that area for generations, I'm sure you've watched it change over time. You're intimately familiar with the issues that all of your constituents probably face on a regular basis.
Yeah, I do. But let me just say, when I ran for office, I door knocked at 6,000 doors. So, we might get into how and why I got into office. But, when you meet people like that at their front door and you are asking what's important to them, you learn so much more about what matters than I could ever by just being one citizen. And that was, win or lose back in 2014, going through that just basic experience of running for office changed me as a person. It did add to and augment some of the things I knew about myself and what was important. But I also understood that people like business owners. They like people that handle budgets. Washington rarely has a good reputation when it comes to passing budgets.
Right.
And so, I think that the citizens definitely liked new, fresh faces in politics. And so, yeah, it was a good validating experience.
So you took my next question. I've heard a rumor of why you ran for office, but I'd love to hear the story from you.
Yeah, our company was, attacked by Maryland's Department of Labor. It's the easiest way to describe it. We were, charged without any investigator or the commissioner's office coming to meet with the family and talk things through. And the reason why they could do that is they had a law that basically presumed us being guilty of that law unless we could prove our innocence. So from a bureaucratic standpoint, it became easy to point fingers and say, okay, we'll prove we're wrong, than it was to actually go through and try to do an investigation. When my attorney got involved in this, we realized they could have put us out of business. I mean, the fines and the way that the citations were requiring repayment, it easily could have put us out of business. The other thing my attorney said was, just so we're clear, you're completely innocent of what it is you're after. So we could go in front of a judge and we can do these things. But this bill, the bill that we changed, had some fundamental constitutional issues. That you should be in a position where you're innocent until
right.
You're proven guilty. Trying to prove a negative in court of law, in other words, is almost impossible. And that was set up, in my humble opinion, by intention. So instead of going to court, we went to the legislature. I went to Derek Davis's committee as a citizen, made an appeal to the legislature. And with the help of lobbyists, certainly our industry, I'm in flooring, so it was sort of we were low-hanging fruit on this particular bill. We came to Annapolis and asked for law change. I'm a Republican, so I had a hard time believing we could actually do that. But Mac Middleton was in the Senate Finance Committee as chairman, Derek Davis, both took an active interest in what I was doing, because I wasn't trying to get rid of the law. What I was trying to do is create what I've now called bright line, clear paths to compliance with law. If we're going to pass something, at least give the business community a reasonable shot to actually comply.
Absolutely.
So anyway, after we got the law change, Kelly Schultz brought the bill. I had my then delegate Addie Eckhart, run for Senate. That opened a door that I was told does not open very often. And if I ever thought about taking what I did in Annapolis, if that excited me, and I thought I would want to do this on the other side of the hearing table, that these doors only open so often. 6,000 doors later, I was mad.
Right.
Very upset about what happened to me. And I think that resonated with the voters. And so the why 7 years ago, I was very upset. The why now is that I found, my voice as a Republican. I'm reasonable. I am a listener. I remind myself that my voice can easily be ignored on the House floor and in committee. So I've always endeavored to be, respectful with my colleagues, listen to their concerns. But when I'm speaking as a rule, I think folks listen to me. I try not to, pound my fist and bloviate. I try to be concise and try to win debates on their merits. And that I didn't expect that when I ran first. It's one thing to start angry, but then there has to be a passion for it. And I have developed quite the passion for, being in a public servant, and happy to be here.
Good. Well, and I watched you also participate in the work group on one that dealt with the repercussions of COVID and hazard pay and
yeah, essentially that was the essential workers bill. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I would say you were a phenomenal voice on that side of the table for the business owners, and really protected their rights while you were working on that work group. It was impressive.
Well, thank you.
So you've kind of answered what you've experienced since you got in office. Were there any big surprises? Anything that was completely different than what you imagined it would be like?
Well, I mean, when I go back to say 2014, I'm thinking of a couple of examples as I go through this. But Speaker Bush at the time surprised me, because I knew Economic Matters Committee was a desirable committee. It's got very interesting subject matter, and so many members in the General Assembly like to get that appointment. When he called me and said he was going to appoint me to the same committee that I fought our state, I was surprised. But in truth, the speaker gave me perhaps the greatest gift he could give to any legislator, which is put them in a spot where they can be successful, where the background, matches the
absolutely
assignment. So I'll say I was surprised, because I believe that the general theme here is with 141 members in the House of Delegates. Either it's because of Derek Davis, or it's because of Economic Matters Committee in general. That's a hard committee to get on. The other thing that I would say that is surprising to me and most citizens who watch the news, believe that politics is rancorous, that it's
right.
filled with the opposition, fighting and arguing positions, almost to a point of militarization, it seems like. And the truth of the matter is that most of the work we do here is quite bipartisan. I'd say well over 80% of that is. And when I came into the legislature, I don't know that I had that perception, but
right.
It's surprising in so much as Republicans being at a 2-1 disadvantage, trying to find a way to be relevant and authentic, and also to be strong advocates for our own districts. That most elected officials in Annapolis listen.
Mm-hmm.
All 141 members, and we'll call that a surprise, because the nature of politics doesn't, at least from the media standpoint, seem to imply that that's possible. And I would report that that's quite the opposite.
And I would argue that most of the constituents in the entire state would be happy to hear something like that, because you're right, you hear the complete opposite in the paper, and really nothing different. So, so that's a great thing to point out. What do you've had a 7-year legislative career so far. What do you think your biggest accomplishment has been since getting in office?
Well, I wouldn't say directly being part of that work group that we had last session in and of itself is the biggest accomplishment. The fact that I represent one of almost literally a handful of pure business owners in Annapolis, other people like me, but not many, is one of the strongest accomplishments that I think I've achieved, is to understand my role, how few people have a pure business background. I mean, everybody has other jobs in Annapolis, and obviously so do I, but what I'm saying is people that are business owners first and then get
right.
So that having that perspective, I think is certainly relevant. And it's also rare. The ability to get where I am today, not only to have the relationship, I think, with my chairman and the Democrats, but also to have the respect of my own caucus as we voted for leadership, speaks to, I think, a lot of what I tried to do once I got into office, which is what any business person would do, and that is to find the challenge. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Where are the opportunities to make a difference, and then try to match them up where they don't match, make changes to me as a person to be better. And after 7 years, I'm not there yet. I've got a lot to learn, but I think after 7 years, it's worthy of just discussing how the chairman would have picked up the phone and called and said, look, this is my bill, like the essential worker bill. That's the bill I'm sponsoring, but I want you on the work group. And I didn't pull any punches during the series of meetings, nor did I in committee. But I did it in a respectful way that the chairman knew when he asked me to do that I would, want, if we're going to pass a bill, to have the best product possible. And I do think the chairman does remember me from whence I came.
Right.
If we're going to pass bills, we shouldn't intentionally harm businesses. And I think that's a good answer to the question, the way you phrased it.
It absolutely was. And I watched every one of those meetings, and they were, it was interesting because everybody, while there were very opposing opinions on it, everybody didn't really work together very hard on that piece of legislation to make something palatable that they could get through the entire legislature. And that's how our process works, and I love that about the process. So you've talked a little bit about what you have worked on. What do you want to work on in the future?
Well, the leadership change is going to be a challenge. It's going to be difficult. And so I'll answer the question this way, that being in leadership brings additional responsibility. It does carry the weight of all of our members to bring them together when it comes time to vote, that we're well educated on the subject matter, that when bills come to the House floor, we know what they are, and how they can impact us. So if it does get to the House floor, we can bring reasonable, responsible debate on its merits. So that's a challenge and something that I'm going to be personally working on. And the other thing about leadership in the Republican Party is it certainly adds to my responsibility to carry the mantle along with Jason Buckle, who's the minority leader for the conservative cause. We are at a 2-to-1 disadvantage, but we don't necessarily view that as such on the House floor. We have a job to do. We need to represent our interests. I have a very conservative voting record, and there's a good reason for that. It's principled, and see, those opportunities to speak on the House floor will come more often than they have come in the past for me, and so I'll grow as a person. I have to find a way to be more responsible, more capable, to be informed, to educate the legislature. If we're going to pass bills, here's how it affects us. It's going to cause me to be more aware of what's happening out of my committee. Like for the past 7 years, I know exactly what's going on in economic matters. Well, every bill now that has a reading across the House floor on second and third reader, I need to be aware of, and that's going to add a tremendous amount of time and personal responsibility if it's going to be done well, and I fully intend on doing that job well. So
I want to back up just a tad because I like what you said there and about being in leadership. I don't think a lot of people understand that are outside of the process. Probably nobody understands. What does the minority whip do? What is your job as the minority whip? Can you explain that a little bit?
After I was elected, I came to the caucus office and met with Carrie Simon Sparrow, who is one of the 2 members of our caucus full-time staff. And I asked her, so what's the whip do? It was
I
funny.
only know because I worked for a congressman on the Hill that was the minority whip there, or he was the majority whip. But
yeah. So it was kind of funny. She came preloaded. I guess this is the custom for newly elected leaders in the House of Delegates. She had a sheet of paper like this that looked like it was from the 3rd grade. And across the top of the sheet of paper, it said, "What does a whip do?" So I say that in light. Obviously, Kathy Schlega for 7 years presented a version of what a whip does, and the committee structure, how we have leadership within each committee. So the whip, it is like herding cats. There will come occasions where we need votes to be held both in committee and also on the House floor. You know, we want, as a Republican caucus, to have each member vote their conscience. I mean, that's a hallmark of what Nick Kipke and Kathy Szeliga insisted when they talked with us within caucus, that you know, we as Republicans may very well differ or disagree on certain things, but on the other side, there are going to come occasions where, you know, the Republican caucus needs to come together, whether it's within the committee jurisdiction or whether it's on the House floor, or it could be some parliamentarian positions and future opportunities for us to act as a caucus. You know, my job is to have a relationship and have the respect of all the members. So when those times come, I can explain and articulate why we need votes to go a certain way. And look, I think that Republicans and Democrats, when some challenging bills come through, you know, I think on occasion the Democrats need the Republicans to step up, you know, do the hard work that we're all elected to do, to make sure that the rural parts of our state, the Republican districts aren't run over. I think Democrats do want Maryland to be one Maryland when they say that. And so as a minority whip, my response when I hear that we're one Maryland, I agree, but we're not the same. Yeah, and so we need to make sure that you know, when those times come to assert some sovereignty in our particular political persuasion, that we can do that. And maybe that's a political, long-winded answer, but it is the herding cats, and it is. You know, I'll leave you with the following thought. Kathy Szeliga and Nick Kipke were always well prepared, well rehearsed when it came time to speak to the media, presented a wonderful image of who we are as Republicans. And in those situations, when the Washington Post or the Baltimore Sun, when the regional television stations come calling, every caucus member expects Jason and I to do our very best to reflect who we are as a caucus. And that perhaps is the last comment I would make, is that we have to be, as leaders, respected and also be heard, not only again now in the House of Delegates, but also in the media. So
right. Well, and it helps that you're well liked between both the other House members and I mean, pretty much everybody. I don't get to meet anybody that doesn't like you, so just throw that out there. All right, so to wrap things up, can you tell us one unique thing or fun fact about you that you'd like people to know?
Well, thanks for asking. I like to hike.
Oh, okay.
So I've hiked the Appalachian Trail. I will tell you, if I win the lotto, I'm probably going to stop it all and hike the 2,100 miles. So it comes across a little weird because, you know, people don't always understand what it's like to be on a trail for a handful of days. But I've hiked from Front Royal, Virginia, down to, you know, Roanoke. So that's a few hundred miles that I've hiked of that. And, you know, that's for me, it's the place where I go to think. You know, I like to joke, I leave a lot of baggage behind with me when I go hiking. When you get on the trail for 7 or 8 hours, you get rid of a lot of anger. But you also, you know, from my perspective, I think about things that are important. I think about political issues on the trail when I'm hiking. So it's, you know, things that I've said and speeches that I've given. Quite often I've given those probably 10 or 15 times as I'm trudging up one of these these hills. I've been to the Rockies, so I know what mountains look like. These are, you know, the hills of the Appalachian.
Right.
So yeah, that's my one unique fact. And I have every intention. I'm 49 years old, so I don't know at what age I will finish the Appalachian Trail. Obviously, politics is delaying a sooner finish to this, but it's about 2,000 miles, and my intention is to finish it before when I'm done.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So I hike the NCR trail regularly, but I think my max is usually, my regular is usually 7 miles and I'm done. Not quite up to your caliber yet.
Well, look, if I were to stand up, I'm not in the best shape for hiking, but I hiked 20 miles the last go around.
Wow.
Session was over down in Roanoke, so they call that the triple crown in Virginia: McAfee Knob, Dragon's Tooth, and Tinker Cliffs, I think, or Tinker Hills. But anyway, the part I did was what was called Dragon's Tooth, which I should have known, or at least thought as I was passing through this area, that was going to be unusually difficult to try to do a 20-mile day, and it was.
I bet it was.
A bit much, yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you, Delegate Adams, for joining us today. We look forward to finding ways to work together in the future. You've always been great to work with in the past. So we really appreciate you joining us. And for more conversations with legislators and more online with Old Line, please visit oldlinelobbying.com.